Okay, today we have Joyce LeeAnn Joseph, author of the new book, Somethymes Grief Goes for a Walk. Thank you for joining us.
You're welcome. Thank you for having me.
Oh, wonderful. So, right now, tell us a little bit about your book. First, I'd like to state that the book, you don't refer to it as a book. You refer to it as an archival text. Tell us what the difference is.
Well, with a book, I'll just define what an archival text is. To me, it is more so a space to creatively archive. When you archive something, you're not always interpreting it. You're just more so preserving something. So you're taking documents and putting them in proper housing and applying some type of order to them and making sure that they can be accessible to people. And what I wanted to do in the space of creativity was there were certain memories and things that had happened to me that I wanted to preserve and put in some proper housing, because sometimes things can get lost in your home. Sometimes homes burn down. Sometimes things are lost when you move. So I wanted to always have a space where I can preserve certain memories that are important to me. And so I don't interpret everything in the text. I use the documents to let them tell the stories themselves, just as if a researcher went to an archive and was to look at things, the way the archivist had processed the collection and created a series would, tell some story about the creator of the collection. And so that's what I'm trying to do in a creative way in the space of the text.
Okay, and in the text, the book, this is a great book. You have to go out and get it. What were the motivating factors for this particular text?
The motivating factor was my experience with grief. I had wanted to preserve that experience because, as someone who recently passed away, her name's Akila Oliver, she would talk about the ecstatic space in grief and about finding that space where you feel propelled to just move forward in your life with like such a force and awareness of life's finality. And so with this book, I had our archival text. It started off just me journaling to the person who had departed. That was the person who, before he had passed, that I would normally talk to about everything that was going on in my life. That was the person I consoled to. That was like my best friend. So when that person passed away, the person I would normally talk to was no longer there. And I didn't know who to say these things to. So I started writing to him. And then I went into this program at Naropa where I was having more space to do my work on my own writing. And every time I would show up to a class session, we would get regardless of the prop, was to go outside and play in the dirt and see what comes from that. Or she said, white as snow, go from there, regardless of what the prop was. It always went to death for me in that space. And so after a while, I realized that I was accumulating a lot of material. And one thing I realized in grief is after you lose the body, there's that space that you have to deal with and that level of pain. But then years go by and memories start to fade. Like you once were able to be like, close your eyes and you can do a whole layout of the house. You can smell somebody, and then 2-3 years go by and you like, wait a second, what cologne did he wear? And that is a whole nother level of pain. To know that those memories that you were using to hold space are now fading too. And so at some point I wanted to preserve that. And so everything that I had as far as the documents from our relationship, we had this camera that I had got from a contest, this MTV contest that I did. I had this camera and it documented my whole experience with this person. And when he passed, I had all this material. So it was just, the motivation was to create a space that would allow me to preserve the importance of that person in my life without having to hold on to my grief in order to do it.
Right. Wow. And so what do you plan for the reader to get from your book, and how is this book enriching their life and helping them?
Did I plan for the reader? Well, there's another writer, her name is Banu Kapil.
Mm-hmm.
She had said something at Naropa that always stuck with me. During a panel session, she said, someone asked her about her writing, and she said that she keeps in mind when she's writing a text, this 14-year-old girl from London.
Mm-hmm.
And I really that stuck with me because I was always trying to be like, well, who am I writing to? And who is my audience? And I know little girls too. You know, I know a 14-year-old girl from Denver or a 16-year-old girl from Denver. And the person that I kept seeing in my mind a lot of the time when I was composing this text was one of my sister's friends whose mother had committed suicide when she was in high school. Maybe a year or so after Adrian, who is the main person in this text, who like maybe a year or so after he had passed away. And as I was writing the text, I just kept seeing her, and I kept seeing all these other people who I knew were grieving. And it wasn't like I was trying to write like a self-help book to them or some like grief pamphlet. It was like I just kept seeing them as I was composing. And I would hope that somebody who read it would get out of it a sense of not being alone in that space. Because someone can pass away and everyone's like, oh, it's going to be okay, it's going to be all right. But there's some days when you don't believe that. And there's some days when it's very hurtful. And it's just nice to understand somebody who understands those days. I remember reading this poem that I cannot for the life of me remember where I read it. But there was this woman who wrote all of these haikus about losing a lover. And it was the first time, and I read this at Naropa for my haiku class, and I really wish that I didn't discard that paper so I could remember who wrote these poems. But I remember reading them for this class and not knowing what the content or what the subject matter of the haikus are going to be till I read them. And I remember by the time I read her whole series of them, I was crying because it was the first time that I was like, yes, that's what I'm feeling. Like, that is how hurtful it is. That is that pain. And for somebody to put the pain into words was really great for me. Not just putting, there, you're going to be okay, and there's a rainbow at the end. I'm like, but what about the tunnel and the darkness and the hurt that's down there? And someone to be able to write that out, I think is what I would hope the reader would get, is that you're not alone in grief, and there's other people who have been there too. So,
okay. So your book was published in July of this year.
Or June
of this year.
Yeah.
And since then, you've had a few live performances.
Yes.
And I was lucky enough to catch one, and I'd like to show people a little from that.
Nearly everyone breathing air will one day get a call that a breath has stopped completely. They will awaken from the best night ever into the worst day imaginable. A quick shower will be had, teeth brushed, quick strides made to a morning's destination, and there it will happen. Many have imagined that day. Some have been forewarned. Nonetheless, a phone will ring. A door will be knocked on. A mailman's footsteps will approach, and that surreal moment will become real. I'm sorry. I hate to. I don't know how else to say it, but Earth hung himself last night. Lydia was in a real bad car accident. Frank was a damn good soldier. James had a stroke, and someone broke into Evelyn's apartment. I'm so sorry to tell you, but they didn't make it. Dead. Dying. Dead. Every day, Edame would straighten her bones and start the daily rounds. Hello, Captain Frank. Hello, Lydia. Nice to see you, Evelyn. Hey, Walter. How do you do, Mr. Criswell? Oh, Herb, I see your son came to see you. She touched the wind-blown flag. Hello, Annie. Somebody was buried as Jane Doe. She lost her name, like the other unmarked graves, lost the eye, reduced to a concrete blob holding space. Edda Mae got down and touched Jane Doe's blob. Traffic rolled by, and Edda Mae was numb to the living sounds, yet the sight of feces stirred disgust within her. It is not right that dog shit is everywhere, she thought. On her way to lot B34, Edda Mae's jeans softly touched the weeds growing on baby Paula. A lot of babies die in this world. Even if they lived before, it still hurts that much is not needed to subtract what's left from what's right of a hyphen. Someone left his or her heart here.
So that was a performance of you at the Bowery Poetry Club. And those were 2 excerpts from this book, Sometimes Grief Goes for a Walk. It almost comes across in the performance of spoken word, and it's just as powerful read as in read in the text. And obviously that's because it comes from a part within you. Do you think that the reader definitely gets the same feeling from reading it silently in their bedroom or their living room or their den as they would if you read it to them?
Yes and no. Yes, because people who have read it without ever seeing me perform have written to me and told me, oh my goodness, you put into words something that I felt. So I think someone who already maybe knows the emotion may be able to just be reminded of it, and that there is something to be gotten from just reading it. But I have understood from some people who know me that like a girl that I went to Naropa with, who would tell me, like, now when she reads my work, she can hear me when she's reading. So I understand that my performance element, if that can enhance the text, if someone's able to see a full interpretation of it, because I also did my unveiling at the Bowery, and that was a much longer performance that included actual audio footage and actual documents that I showed. So being able to see how I interpret it does help somebody interpret the text better. But I mean, there's still something to be said for just picking it up and having your own experience too.
All right. And with your performance, if you guys did pick up on this, yes, Miss Joseph was playing a typewriter.
Yes, that was Bella. She does not like to be played. She was standing in for Mr. Gray, who is currently having a ribbon problem. And Mr. Gray replaced Eleanor, who I had experimented with drumsticks, and she allowed such not to tell me that she was actually being hurt in the process. And so as an archivist, I have learned no drumsticks on the typewriters, just nice finger taps do the trick. So yeah, Bella is usually the writer's companion who likes to sit on the desk and be pretty, but she got to work every now and then. So Mr. Gray is trying to get him back in business.
And when did you first go about playing the typewriter?
At Naropa. All of this comes back to Naropa, like the place I always return to. At Naropa, I met this woman whose name escapes me right now. And we went into this thrift store and I found the typewriter, and I was like, oh my goodness, I've been really wanting a typewriter because I'm a writer. I'm nostalgic and I like tangible things. So I've always wanted a typewriter. And so we go into this thrift store and I find $1 on it. And we went to my mother's house afterwards, and I'm like showing my mom it, and I'm like just tapping it and stuff. And she told me, she was like, I see you doing this. And I was like, doing what? She was like doing this, like playing this typewriter. And I was like, oh, I'm just gonna like go home and write with it. But she had said, like, just the way I was just playing around with the sound of it, that she saw me doing that. And lo and behold, you know, I started playing instrumentals as I would type, and just really liked the sound quality that can be made from a typewriter. Like, I really appreciate how John Cage would go about making music from any type of thing. Like, it's just banging on this, you can make music. And so I further development with the typewriter was my friend Caitlin Gill, who is a performer, musician, all around cool chick. She wanted to learn how to play the guitar, and she was also learning songwriting. So we would meet under this bridge in Boulder, off the Boulder Creek path, and she would bring her guitar to work on her songs, and I would bring my typewriter so I can write. And there was something that kept being, there was just like a musicality about what we were doing. Like, I found myself, what I was writing was going to her songs, and that just the sounds that I was starting to type a certain way so I can like keep a beat with her, and it just expanded from there. And then I started learning some things about drums and like trying to apply rudiments to the typewriter. And
I also think it's great that in this modern day of computers and iTouches and iPads and iPhones and everything else, that you've made what was definitely seen as the classics writer's tool still part of the conveyance of your art of writing. And it's beautiful, it sounds beautiful, and it sounds a lot better than it's nothing. And
this is the sound of me.
One hand swiping. And it's definitely makes writing again a more interactive experience again, which I think over the years that we are, as a people, are losing. So I think it's actually quite beautiful. It sounds wonderful, and I really appreciated that. So one other thing I'd like to ask you about is publication. Tell us about how you became published, how you went about being published.
One day I just decided I was just gonna do it, and I don't know. I understand even without having gotten an MFA, I brushed up against those students enough at Naropa to understand the protocols. I understand that you try to get a chapter or a poem submitted in a literary journal, and that maybe an agent will see it, or that you apply to a contest, or you just know of all these small publishers, or you just are in the right place in Barnes & Noble at the right time, and somehow you find your way to getting published. Most people, really perfect their craft before they want to publish. And those things never appealed to me. Like, the idea of sifting through all the massive amounts of literary journals to figure out one to submit to, I didn't want to spend my time doing that. I'd rather spend my time learning more rudiments, or just being out dancing or something. So I just had decided that for this project, I needed to do it. This project, numbers is really important. I'm very conscious of what numbers, like even in the text, like the Bloomquist Cemetery parts, all the numbers you use are very important. The number of how much the book costs, what days I released the book on, how many performances I want to do in total from the book, all these things I'm controlling as far as numbers and the symbolicness of certain numbers in relationship to me and this person's connection. So I wanted to make sure that the book came out at a certain time, and it's hard to do that with a publisher because you're on their time and on, their schedule. So I decided that because I wanted to have so much control over this project, that it meant that I had to see it through. And I didn't want it to be a chapbook, which it serves the same type of purpose. It's like my first text. It's it could be considered a chapbook, but I wanted it to be preserved a little bit more than like just a 100 copy run somewhere. So I decided to self-publish. One of my friends, that's the copy of the book. Right. One of my friends, LaVon Natasha Caesar, one of my best friends, she had published The Black Pussy Revolution through part 1 through Lulu, which is an online publishing, self-publishing company. And I remember getting her book and being like, it looks like a real book. It was actually like a paperback book with like a barcode on it. And so I went and learned more about it, and I actually really like Lulu. They You can just go there and upload your book, and they print on demand. So you don't have to, sit there and be like, do I make 500 copies and hope to sell it, or do I make 1,000 copies? I was like, I'm gonna order 1 copy and I'm gonna see what it looks like, and then I'm gonna order 20 copies, I'm gonna order 15 copies. I can order as many as I want, as few or as lot. But also it gives the audience and potential buyers a chance to just go to the site and order the book, and they are printed thin. And just all of their the things that they offer through their self-publishing site was really helpful, and I really liked the experience in that. When I got the book, I liked the quality that it was made in, but I did a lot to make it happen. I actually wrote down like a whole list recently of like logistic stuff that I had done for, and I realized that it takes a lot to publish a book. And this was an interesting process because it taught me what it takes to get things published. So now going forward, if I choose to work with publishers for future projects, I know what it's going to take,
I also like to show people, like, most of the book obviously is in novel format, and then you have these these other pages.
Yeah, those are the actual artifact pages, archival pages.
And this is what definitely makes it an archival text in comparison to just a novel or a printed journal. And you definitely get the feel, even with the change of type and text, from typewriter text to obviously our basic computer text and photographs, of what it's like to have actually been in this space in time while you were composing this, obviously. And it's something I think you should go, and you can get it at lose.com.
Yeah, or you can go through, if you go to joyceleeann.com and click under archival text, it'll direct you there.
Okay, and definitely.
Yes, thank you.
Thank you for coming out.
You're gonna get sad, but keep moving on, like my good old dad, cause agony is the key to a happy life. There's no tribe called Quest if there is no fight. Agony is the key to a happy life. I like my ice cream straight and I like it fried.
My name is Joyce LeeAnn Joseph, and this has been an interview with Tangy Muse and Day by Day Entertainment.
In actuality, I mean in reality, the words that I speak are a mere hypothesis. Pure agony might not be what it's about, but comparisons of one state to another. Agony might be more than I can claim. I have no pure joy and I have no pain. I know a person we can ask who's known agony, a grandmaster on the mic, Percy Carey.